Get back into books with Richard and Judy.
You know when you've been in a relationship for a long time and...
You start finishing each other's sentences?
Precisely. Well, our next book is...
Sort of like that?
Yeah, quite. The central characters are twins who have this...
Special sense. Maybe because they've been linked from the womb.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to say, but...
I got there first, sorry. Can't help it sometimes.
Well, we're meeting identical twins with a special intuition next on...
The Richard and Judy Book Club podcast. It's exclusive, you know.
I was going to say that too. Ugh.
When I started reading Sisterland, I was slightly nervous. I'll tell you why. Because I read her previous bestseller, American Wife, and it is quite frankly one of the best books I have ever read.
I must read it, actually. I must get round to reading it.
It's just absolutely wonderful, a wonderful book. And I was a bit scared when I started reading Sisterland.
Why?
Because, you know, when you've read an author for the first time and you think their book's fantastic and you start the next one, you think, oh, please, please, please make it be as good. It is, though. It's really excellent. I love the story. I love the kind of, the earthquake kind of scenario in Mississippi. I had no idea, I don't know if you ever did, that the earliest earthquakes in America, recorded ones, actually were in Mississippi, that actually they were bigger
than the Californian ones.
Than the Californian ones
I had no
later.
idea, absolutely no idea it was on a fault line.
No.
Didn't know at all.
No. So basically she makes this rumoured earthquake, which is predicted by one of the sisters, one of the twin sisters. She makes this a peg for the whole meaning of the book, and I think very successfully. What it is these two sisters, one of them they're identical, they both live in the same town, one's happily married, suburban, child, etc., etc. The other one isn't. In fact, she's flirting with lesbianism as we speak, much to the other one's disgust. And she's not beautiful and svelte, although they are identical. They're no longer identical because the psychic twin sister, she thinks she's psychic, has sort of become very fat and all the rest of it. So they're very, very different, yet essentially the same. And the thing is that both the girls, the twins, have always been aware that they share this special psychic gift. They can literally see into the future.
And they really can.
They really can. But Kate, who's the more sensible twin as she's grown up, the one who's got married, the one who's leading the suburban life, has decided to turn her back on that because she wants, above all, to be normal and ordinary and have a normal life. Violet, the other twin sister, hasn't at all. She loves it. She despises Kate for turning her back on the gift that they have, and she uses it. She is a professional psychic. She actually makes her money out of telling people's fortunes, and she has this sudden idea in her head that very shortly there is going to be a major earthquake in their living area. And of course there's a huge, she gets on local television, national television, there's a huge furore, huge press, she becomes really famous. It's very funny the way it's actually put together. And the whole point of the book is, does Kate, the sensible sister, believe Violet's prediction at all, or does she try and ignore it? And in the end, what happens... Well, I won't give away the end. What are you laughing at?
I have nothing more to add. That's perfect. You've completely summed it up. I mean, you know, you had twins, my stepsons. Did you see any resonances at all in the story? I mean, the world is fascinated by twins, and we speculate endlessly about them, particularly identical twins. And they're used in all sorts of clinical research trials, you know, and all of that. You know, it's part of your everyday stuff that you've got twins. Did you see any resonances in the book?
No. I don't think either Tom or Dan was remotely psychic, and if so, they hid it from me very, very well.
They're hiding
indeed.
it well, yeah.
But they're close. They're very close. I think that never goes away.
But it's a beautifully written book. You're right. She is a great
she's
writer.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, those are our thoughts, but let's find out a bit more about the author, Curtis Sittenfeld, who's been contemplating our questions.
So much more than your average book club. This is the Richard and Judy Book Club, exclusive to WHSmith.
So actually, the inspiration came from the earthquake. I live in St. Louis, Missouri, where the book takes place, which is, in the middle of the United States. What's sometimes called flyover country by Americans who live in San Francisco or New York. And in 1811 and 1812, there were enormous earthquakes in this area, which a lot of people who live in the United States don't even know. And then in 1990, a sort of pseudo-scientist made a prediction that there was going to be another huge earthquake in this area. Though, again, Americans don't think of this, and scientists don't really talk about this being an earthquake-prone area. It's not considered like Los Angeles or San Francisco. Anyway, so people, even educated people at the time that the scientists made the prediction, were very worried and bought earthquake insurance or, got lots of bottled water for their basement. And it didn't come to pass. But years later, I moved to St. Louis and someone told me about it. And I thought, oh my gosh, an earthquake prediction would be such a great premise for a novel, because there would be this automatic ticking clock. And there would be one kind of suspense if the prediction comes true, and then there would be another kind of drama if it doesn't.
You have sisters to whom you showed the book when you were writing it. Was their input important?
Well, I'm one of 4 siblings. I have an older sister, a younger sister, and a younger brother. So I definitely, I feel that, almost everyone grows up in a family. Obviously, I guess some people don't, but almost everyone does. And that's such rich, irresistible material for a novelist, because you're bound to these people, but you didn't choose them necessarily. But then you also have a lot in common in terms of experiences and frames of reference. So yeah, they did give me some feedback. So my older sister said, she said, oh, I was gonna read a page or 2 before I went to bed, and then I looked up and it was 100 pages had gone by. So I took that as a very big compliment, because I think my sister's very, very sleep deprived. So the fact that she would voluntarily spend her time reading it was flattering. But I mean, my sisters are pretty bluntly honest about what they like and don't like, and they read maybe 3 to 5 books a year. Like, they're really smart. They read the newspaper. They're educated, but they have busy lives. They have jobs. They have young children. So I do feel like, in some ways, if I can write a book that holds their interest, then I think I'll write a book that holds the interest of other people too, who have busy lives. And of course, my sisters are not going to, they might sugarcoat their opinion a little bit, but they won't, I don't think they'll outright lie to me and tell me they like it if they don't. In the age of the internet, they're not my harshest critics, but they're not my gentlest critics either.
Are you generally sympathetic to people who think that they're psychic?
It's one of those things that I'm open to. I mean, I don't see the book as a defense of psychics, and I don't see it as a condemnation of psychics. The characters definitely believe themselves to be psychic, and they don't really spend much time defending their own credibility, even though, Kate, the narrator, is married to someone who definitely does not believe in psychic abilities. But I guess I personally would say I think the world is very mysterious. There are lots of unexplained phenomena that we just sort of have to accept their inexplicability as we go about our daily lives, like things like, why are we all here? What is infinity? What happens after death? And are we the only inhabited planet? Like things like that. So I don't think psychicness is more far-fetched than a lot of other things.
Why did you choose an earthquake as the literal and, I guess, metaphorical theme of the book?
Well, again, I don't think that I ever consciously choose a metaphorical theme for my book. I think I focus more on what the literal events would be, and then the metaphorical stuff arises from that. So this idea of a real life earthquake prediction that took place in 1990 was just so tempting to me, and then everything else kind of unfolded from that. I mean, obviously there's some dramatic twists and turns that occur in the book. And I feel like it's the responsibility of the novelist to make dramatic twists and turns occur. The book would be very tedious if they didn't.
You have an absolutely amazing writing talent. American Wife is pure genius. So what next?
I actually have been asked to be part of this project where 6 writers are rewriting each of Jane Austen's novels, and Joanna Trollope just did Sense and Sensibility, and Alexander McCall Smith is going to do Emma, and I'm rewriting Pride and Prejudice, which is sort of, to even utter that sentence feels preposterous, but it's sort of homage or fan fiction. I'm looking forward to it, and it'll be set in the present day in the United States, and I think they asked me as an American. It's a British publisher, but I think they asked me knowing I would set it in the U.S. I mean, the sort of funny and embarrassing part is that I thought, well, of course, I'm not going to try to sound like Jane Austen because that would be so ridiculous. You know, like I'm me, and I'll borrow her plot and her themes, but it's not, you know, I'm not going to try to sort of use her language. And her language is so powerful and irresistible that I find myself using all these words like vex and besmirch that I would never normally use. So it's tough to rewrite Pride and Prejudice and escape the influence of Jane Austen herself. Surprise, surprise.
I'm Ellen Petts, and I'd like to ask you, how do you actually sit down day in, day out on your own and have that focused time? Do you act like it's a job? How do you actually do that focused thing?
Well, I have 2 young children, so my day has to be structured, you know, based on their schedules and when they go to school and when they need to be picked up. But I mean, I write every weekday, you know, and obviously life gets in the way at times, but I try to write every weekday. And I usually write in the morning for a few hours and then go to pick up my younger daughter at school and then come back. And then, you know, sometimes I keep working in the afternoon, but sometimes I just have to attend to errands or sort of more housekeeping stuff that's not, I might be in front of the computer, but I'm not writing fiction. But yeah, I try to, you know, work on fiction for a few hours a day and tune out other distractions, which some days are more successful than others. But I would not want to have my email open while writing, or you know, I don't want to be tweeting while writing. Although I won't say that neither of those things has ever occurred.
What is the best bit of advice about writing that you'd ever been given, and would you pass it on? I think
that the best advice tends to be the sort of boring advice, which is there's really no substitute for putting in the time. You have to sit there, you have to tune out other distractions, and you have to write sentences. And that's really what writing is. Like, writing is not going on book tour. You know, it's not like posing for an author photo. It's making up sentences. And the funny thing too is that ends up being the most satisfying part, even though it can feel frustrating in the moment. But it's, you know, it is sort of, after all, like what originally drew me to being a writer.
What do you do when things are not going to plan?
I think that actually I expect to be frustrated, and so I'm not. I mean, of course there's times when I'll think, you know, I'll write scenes and I'll think, this is terrible. Like, nobody else is reading this, and I feel embarrassed for myself. But I just try to revise and revise until I don't feel embarrassed for myself. I don't really buy into the idea of writer's block, which I think, you know, some writers do and some writers don't. I feel like it's like you can not be in the mood to write, just like you're not in the mood to balance your checkbook, or you're not in the mood to, you know, cook dinner. But you sort of, you know, you kind of do it anyway, or you do something else. And there is sometimes if I just feel like I feel really tired or distracted or whatever, sometimes to try to re-enter my own book, I might revise pages that I've already written, or, you know, move on from some particularly challenging scene to a scene that's somehow easier.
What's it like seeing your work on display on the bookshelves of WHSmith's? That must be really something, surely.
I feel like I've occasionally seen people reading my books on airplanes, and I've never said anything because I feel like I don't want to get trapped talking to that person. You know, like whatever little ego boost would occur is not worth the price of then having like a 90-minute conversation with a stranger. But I mean, as if they're automatically so fascinated by me. But recently I was in a bookstore, and it was in St. Louis where the book is set, and the book was displayed very prominently. And so I said, "How's that book selling?" And they said, "Oh, really well." And I said, "Oh, I wrote it." And I think at first, because they didn't expect me, it was almost like I had said, it's a nice day. And then all at once the guy's like, "Oh, you wrote it? That's you?" And like wanted to shake my hand. So I don't know. I actually feel like I'm a sort of, I think I'm more of an observer or an inconspicuous person. And so I don't really... I don't yearn to draw attention to myself. Or, I mean, honestly, of course, like all writers, I have an egomaniacal side too. So I think it's almost like I don't mind drawing attention to my writing, but I'm not that eager to draw attention to myself.
Tell us what titles you've enjoyed on the Richard and Judy Book Club.
Tweet us or find us on Facebook to share your views, and you could join us on the next series of the Richard and Judy Book Club.
Hello, my name is Duncan, and the book that I've recently read is Black House by Stephen King. And I enjoyed it because it was a real page turner. It was quite supernatural, and that's the way my mind works. So I recommend it to everyone. My name's Helen, and I'm in the Cheddar Book Club. Currently, I'm reading Instructions for a Heatwave. It's a great read. I'm really enjoying it. I'm about halfway through, and I'm just fascinated by the characters and the interaction between the family. And it's a really good book, and set in the 70s, which is a period I remember, and the heatwave. So it's great.
I've just started Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. It's a thriller. I can't tell you much more at the moment because I've literally just started it, but I'm intrigued and I can hardly bear to put it down.
A book that I've read recently that I really love and I keep recommending to everyone is The Death of Bees by Lisa O'Donnell. It's a story set in Glasgow, and it involves two sisters whose parents have recently deceased. And I won't tell you any more about that because that's very central to the plot. What's really unusual and interesting about the book is it's told by three different people. It's narrated by three different people, and it's three very, very different voices. But you really grow to love all three of them. Even the drug dealer becomes one of your favourite characters by the end.
When we return, we'll revisit a true classic of English literature. How do you fancy a bit of Pride and Prejudice? But from a totally different point of view.
And over it all, icy starlight shone. It shone on the slate roofs and the flagged yard and the necessary house and the shrubbery and the little wilderness off to the side of the lawn, and on the coveys where the pheasants huddled, and on Sarah, one of the two long-born housemaids, who cranked the pump and filled a bucket and rolled it aside, her palms already sore, and then set another bucket down to fill it too.
Joe Baker will introduce us to the staff, not the Bennett family, well, not much of the Bennett family anyway, when we go to Longbourn, when you come back to the Richard and Judy Book Club, exclusive to WHSmith.